In this video, we are going to look at the 10 most dangerous prisons in the world. Camp 22, North Korea. It went into operation in 1965 and is counted as one of 30 alleged concentration camps in the country. From reported accounts, inmates were forced into very long shifts of forced labor in the camps and mines, sustained by occasional and scarce meals. Sanitary conditions were poor, and once inside, it was almost impossible to get out alive. Other witnesses also claim that in addition to the torture and violence they endured, some inmates were used as human guinea pigs for scientific experiments conducted by camp doctors. 9. Bang Kwang Prison, Thailand. Upon entering the facility, prisoners are forced to wear chains on their feet for the first 3 months of their stay. This is not only to reduce their ability to move, but also to undermine them psychologically. Prisoners are only entitled to a bowl of rice and vegetables. The rest must be bought at the commissary. Therefore, a kind of power hierarchy dominated by money has been created within the prison. The richest employ the poorest as servants in exchange for food or other goods. 8. Louisiana State Prison, USA. The Louisiana State Prison, also called Angola State Prison, owes its name to the Angolan slaves who once worked in the fields surrounding the prison. This exploitation of labor, unfortunately, has not yet died out. Today, in fact, prisoners are still forced to work in the fields, following grueling work rhythms and without any care for their health. In fact, Angola State Prison is notorious for neglect in health care. Many inmates are denied necessary medical care, and over the years, to economize, the prison is said to have hired doctors whose medical licenses had been suspended. This, and continuing incidents of violence and abuse of power by guards, make Louisiana State Prison one of the worst on the planet. 7. Gitarama, Rwanda. The space is so cramped and the number of inmates so large that they are all forced into the outer yard without any kind of shelter from the elements, to stand for hours on end in the dirt and mud. Because of this, many prisoners develop infections and gangrene, leading to amputation of fingers, feet, or legs. Gitarama Prison's estimated mortality rate is advancing at a rate of 5-10 deaths per day. 6. Petak Island, Russia. Petak Island Prison is considered one of the safest prisons in Russia. Only those with life sentences or who have been guilty of crimes such as murder, cannibalism, terrorism, and pedophilia are incarcerated here, with only 500 inmates and the total amount of murders committed by them at 3,500 for an average of 5 per prisoner. Black Dolphin is to be considered one of the worst prisons in the world. 5. Kamiti, Kenya. In the penitentiary, 7-8 prisoners are crammed into each cell, in spaces so cramped that they have to sleep on the floor, on their sides, all turned to the same side. Exacerbating the overcrowding situation are the inadequate ventilation systems in the facility. In addition, witnesses report daily incidents of violence and abuse that add to the multiple illnesses such as cholera and ulcers due to malnutrition and lack of hygiene. 4. ADX Florence Supermax Facility, USA. ADX Florence in Colorado is the ultimate maximum security prison, where all criminals guilty of the most serious crimes such as terrorism and multiple homicide are incarcerated. Because of its location and impenetrability, the prison has been nicknamed Alcatraz of the Rockies. Prisoners are forced into a cell for 23 hours a day, and the only contact they have with the outside world is a tiny window through which some natural light manages to enter. This type of prison is designed in such a way as to put severe psychological pressure on the inmates, who often arrive at delusions and acts of violence against themselves, sometimes fatal. 3. Diyarbakir, Turkey. Diyarbakir, Turkey, is considered the prison with the most human rights violations per inmate. The prison is notorious for inhumane treatment of inmates, who often prefer to take their own lives than to continue living in those cells. Prisoners and visitors alike witness abuse and violence. The latter choose not to report the facts in order to protect their loved ones inside the prison, while prisoners often organize hunger strikes and protests that are unfortunately inconclusive. Serious sanitation deficiencies are also present here, but what makes this prison one of the cruelest is the incarceration of children who are often sentenced even to life imprisonment. 2. Rikers Island, USA. The Rikers Island complex owes its fame to multiple journalistic and legal cases over the years that have exposed the violence present inside. Rikers Island is considered one of the strictest prisons in the United States. However, this severity often results in physical and mental abuse by guards. Testimonies report not only accounts of guards beating inmates to death, but also guards instigating fights among inmates. Another factor that makes this prison one of the worst is the inordinate use of solitary confinement, where inmates are locked up for weeks or months, severely compromising their psychological health. Because of investigations and court cases that have brought to light the violence and injustices within the prison, the New York City Council has ordered its closure by 2026. 1. La Modelo, Colombia. What makes this prison one of the worst is not only the notorious trafficking of weapons and drugs, but the kind of society formed within it, a society that mirrors the reality outside. The wards of the penitentiary are organized according to a community of belonging model. The North Wing is populated by far-left militants, the South Wing is populated by right-wing paramilitary militias, and the Central Section by drug traffickers, bosses, and other criminals. Each has its own area of control and internal organization. What brought this prison into the spotlight, however, was the discovery in 2016 of the remains of more than 100 bodies in the prison sewage system. These included not only inmates, but also dead bodies of visitors.